making sure they establish an open line of communication with those new employees. I'm always mindful of that employee that comes in and you're like, hey, you did orientation and then go out there and be great. Make sure that they are following up and setting up mentors and making sure they're setting that person up for success.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everyone, welcome to the session today. I'm so glad you're here with us, and I'm looking forward to diving into some good things around how we can serve our people, how we can create better employee experiences, some of the ways to make that work, and really break this down in a way that's actionable and practical for all of you. I'm excited to have not one, but two amazing guests with me. I have Tiffany Hendricks here with me and Drew Kropf from the team over at Insperity. So we're going to dive into some good stuff. Welcome to both of you. Glad that you're here.
Thanks, Ben. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited about the opportunities. Good conversation.
It's going to be a good conversation, a fun conversation. I'm already planning it out in my head. I can see it happening. So before we get into some of the good stuff that we're going to talk about today, Tiffany, would you take a minute and tell us more about who you are and what you do, please?
Sure. Tiffany Hendricks. I'm a manager of HR services here at Insperity. I've been with Insperity for a little over 6 years, serving our largest clients that Insperity supports of 1,000 or more employees. I'm here to be a thought partner for our clients, be a strategic thought leader with them, help with anything from HR to surveys to compensation, but just to be a great resource to support our clients where they are on the HR side.
Wonderful. Glad to hear. Drew, how about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Drew Kropf, senior strategy consultant. So been with Insperity 2 times now. This is my second go round. I've been back since March of 2023, was here originally from 2014 to 2016. Left to start my own company, built that up to the point where someone else wanted it, sold it, and was sitting around home. And my gal said she was sick of looking at me. I need to go back to work. So the only place I was willing to go work again was Insperity, and it brought me back here. So my background's in industrial and organizational psychology. I've done a lot of different work, a lot of different size clients, but here at Insperity, I traditionally work with Tiffany's group. So those larger clients all the way down to clients of 150 or more. So pretty broad range that I work with.
Tremendous. So one thing that you two don't know about me, but the audience might have heard this before, is before I was a researcher and analyst and all the things I do now, I was actually an HR practitioner in that range of companies that you just talked about serving. So for me, we're going to talk about these things today, and it's not just this abstract idea, but I've been in the seat where some of your customers are when they call you for help and when they're trying to figure out how to do this. Or, Tiffany, help me with this survey thing. We need to do it, but I don't know how to do it. Where do we start? So I'm excited to get into some of those nuts and bolts things today to hopefully give the audience some ideas on what they can do, what the thoughts are around creating a good employee experience, all that good stuff. And so part of what predicated this conversation today is that our team has been working with Insperity behind the scenes. And for all of you out there, you're hearing this for the first time probably, but we actually working on this study around employee experience, what it takes to do it well, what are the key components, not just in our minds as HR leaders, but what matters to the workforce and how do they see this? Do they think that the same things are important that we do? In some cases, yes. And I'll give you a hint that in some cases we may be missing the mark a little bit. So in the conversation today, we'll get into some of the things that you, Drew, and Tiffany are doing to help out and help your companies, the clients you're serving, to create better experiences for their people, for their employees at those organizations, and really get into some good stuff. So let's go ahead and start this one off. Let's dive into it and uncover this a little bit. So one of the things that we already can tell from the research, the early findings, the first thing that stood out to me is that not just for HR leaders, but for business leaders, that employee experience is this really critical priority. Tiffany, why do you think that is right now?
I think just with the different varieties of age groups that are working now, the generations, Gen X, millennials, boomers retiring, I think that makes a difference. I think also post-COVID, just the retention of their employees and wanting to know what makes their employees stay, what's making their employees leave. So employee engagement has become a really hot topic for a lot of organizations that I've been partnering with.
So retention is a big one. What's your short answer to that? If you're going to give someone the peek behind the curtain, all the stuff that you get to see across different clients, what makes people stay?
I would say it's all the things actually that we talked about in this survey. It's compensation, it's work-life balance, it's manager support. It's all the things that were identified in the survey that was presented.
Okay, big stuff there. All right. And then Drew, what do you think? Why do you think that employee experience is a priority, not just for HR leaders or business leaders right now?
I mean, I think Tiffany hit the big one. It's retention, right? It's at the end of the day, it's so costly to replace an employee. And beyond that, you can also lose customers if you're losing those key employees that they once interacted with. So it even becomes a customer retention issue, right? And it's something that employers are really starting to understand. It's not as easy to get that superstar back out of the wild, right? You have to really develop that person. It takes so much time. It's really challenging, as complex as our work has gotten. It's challenging for someone to pick that up relatively quickly. So they're going to have that loss of production over a longer period of time than say would have been true 10 or 15 years ago as we get more complex in the work that we do.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to touch on, is that customer retention piece. I saw that myself personally. We had a brilliant person on that team that just was the creative person that thought of all these wild solutions no one else could come up with. And one day he turned his notice in. The first thing I thought of was what you said, Drew. Is like, I was worried about not just what we're going to do about it, what the customers are going to say, because they're like, they pick up the phone, they want to call to him because they know he's got an idea when everybody else might strike out. And so, yeah, the thing that gets me is when we look into this data, for all of us, Tiffany, as HR leaders, we think of retention, we think of employee engagement and satisfaction, things like that. But our leaders may call it something else. They may think about it in terms of competitiveness. They may think about it in terms of stability or in terms of just innovation. Or we have a creative team here. And when we're losing some of those people, we seem to be losing some of those other things that are touching the business side of that, not just the darn, I've got to report on higher turnover numbers this month, but what's this costing us beyond those boundaries?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Tiffany, it sounds like you dove into the report, dove into some of the data that we've been collecting and working with the team on behind the scenes over here. What you quickly probably saw is that employee experience, we can define it in a lot of ways. It touches a lot of different elements in this, right? Everything from the earliest onboarding touch, how they grow, the surveys piece, which you talked about that you support. So what are you hearing when you're talking to different organizations that are in your client touch points? What are you hearing are the biggest focus areas for them?
The top two areas I would say probably here in the last year or so that have come up have been around onboarding and employee development. So what does our onboarding process look like as as the clients are continuing to add employees in, and are they keeping them? If they are retaining them, what does that process look like for them? And then once they're in and we say we did hire that superstar like Drew mentioned, how are we developing them to stay? So what does that manager training look like? What does that new manager training look like? Do we know truly where that employee wants to take their career, and really having clients hone in on those things? I would say a good chunk of the work that my team is doing to support clients are along that manager development and truly building out a successful onboarding plan.
What do you think is the biggest pitfall or maybe an opportunity for improvement? I want to call it a weakness, but an opportunity for improvement when it comes to onboarding, when companies are like, this isn't where it needs to be. What do you think is like the low-hanging fruit that they should start looking at for ways to improve that?
I think the shift really occurred when companies allowed employees to go remote, right? Like before, everyone was in the office. You can get everybody into a room, talk to them for 4 hours. Now you're hiring remote employees in Montana. And you're like, how do we get the same feeling to that person, the rah-rah, the happiness, the coffee talk with those employees who are not here in person? So I think that's been the biggest shift with clients, is adjusting to the change of now having in-person and remote workers, and how do they make sure that the culture is felt on both sides.
Drew, it makes me smile when I hear Tiffany say that, because I know that a big part of what Insperity does is to make sure that companies are compliant, taking care of the legal side, the compliance, all those things. And when I asked her about the onboarding, she didn't say they weren't checking the boxes on the compliance front. It was, they're not creating connections. The culture's not right. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's what's fun about kind of the way we're structured here at Insperity, is we've got people like Tiffany that have all of that compliance knowledge and this deep background in HR. I don't have any of that. That's not my role at all, right? Mine is much more on that culture side, on building those systems, on helping to do that design work. So from the strategic consulting perspective, we really sit down with our clients and say, okay, what are you hearing? And if they say we don't know, then we help them figure out a way to start listening, right? And then the next step is really to start acting. It's to say, okay, you're hearing from your employees that They didn't have goals set during onboarding. They didn't have milestones that they needed to meet throughout that process. So they really didn't know where they were going or how they were going to get there. And Tiffany makes a great point about people feeling connected, right? I'm the only employee of Insperity within 150 miles of where I live. There's no one near me. But Insperity does a fantastic job of making me feel connected. We have a lot of face-to-face meetings when we can. If I'm traveling for a client, I'll meet with a coworker that just happens to be in that same city. We're very intentional about it. And we challenge our clients to do the same thing. Obviously, depending on financial resources, time, those kinds of things, that can be more challenging. But being intentional about building that connection, I think, is really the number one thing that can be done in that onboarding process to just make people feel a part of the family, or whatever you want to term it. It really starts to become something that's not just a job, but they actually feel connected and committed to. So it's not as easy to just up and leave when a few more dollars an hour comes along.
Yes, I actually had that conversation with someone just the other day about that, because they were saying that they were struggling to keep some people, and like, well, they're leaving for just a little bit more money. I said, are they really? Because if you've got the right kind of culture, you've got leadership in place to support, if you've got these other things around them, then that money, it starts to be like, I don't know if that's worth that. Just a little bit of money, right? It's gonna be a lot more money in order to make them think about moving and uprooting what they've done there.
Yeah, that's where I lean into Drew's team, right? I lean into his team to again create like those onboarding surveys to help create those touch points for the client, for their employees. Lean into the managers, like what feedback are you giving? What feedback are you receiving? But having an open, making sure they establish an open line of communication with those new employees. I'm always mindful of that employee that comes in and you're like, hey, you did orientation and then go out there and be great. Make sure that they are following up and setting up mentors and making sure they're setting that person up for success. Because we've seen where when companies have done that, it works. But when they fail to have kind of that structure or that guidance around helping their employees and making sure they want to set the appropriate expectation in the beginning, they struggle.
So you both used the F word for feedback there a couple of times. Sorry, the appropriate F word is a feedback. You've used that word a couple of times. And I want to point out for the audience here that one of the things that I guess I can say it hurt my heart a little bit to see this in the data. When we look at the research, about 4 out of 10 employees said that when I give feedback to the company, either I can't tell if they used it, they didn't acknowledge it, or they didn't do anything with it, or I can't even give feedback. Right? There was 4 out of 10 had some range of that where it's big fat thumbs down in terms of how the feedback part works. And Drew, you said a minute ago, like we've got to listen first and we've got to take action. It's not just enough to listen, because that's not going to solve anything. It's going to frustrate them if they're telling us problems and we're not actually doing anything with that. Would you talk for a minute about, we'll talk about surveys as an example here. What are some of the ways we can start gathering some of the input from our people so we really know what's going on, what they need, and then start transitioning to how we can address that? Talk with that if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So surveys are the obvious one, right? It's very simple. But one of the things I really challenge my clients with is utilizing the managers that are already kind of on the front lines to do a lot of that intelligence gathering, right? We talk about really building a system for that. And so, if managers aren't having a weekly or bi-weekly meeting with their employees and just checking in with them, saying, hey, what's going on? What are you liking? What are you not liking? What's working well? What can I help with? And then really compiling that data and bringing it back to their leadership and having a direct conversation about it. What's the buzz that they're hearing around the front line? That's a excellent way to just stay plugged in. But sometimes if that manager is either not skilled at that conversation, or perhaps the employee doesn't feel safe enough having that conversation, there isn't that psychological safety there, it can be beneficial to bring in some outside support. Tiffany and I actually worked together on a project a year or 2 ago now, where we actually traveled around to a bunch of different client sites and did on-person one-on-one interviews with their employees. And we were able to gather an incredible amount of data very quickly. These are 10, 12, 15-minute long conversations. We've got set questions we're going to ask everyone with some obvious different follow-ups based on their responses. But we were able to put together a spreadsheet of responses that gave very specific answers to what's going on in the company, what do we need to fix, what do we need to change. And it really didn't take us too long. And it was a lot of fun. It was great to meet some of these people. And we identified some superstars that were just unbelievable human beings. Their stories were amazing. And we challenged that client to take a look at those frontline leaders and say, hey, help us build a system that you're using out so that it can be used in other locations, because they had well-oiled machines that were top of the company and they didn't have a mouthpiece to share that with the other leaders that may be struggling. So we were able to get a lot done in just a few short meetings.
That stands out to me. One of the things I talked about is, in a perfect world, every employee has a manager like the superstars you're talking about that see their good work, that recognize them, that are lifting them up, giving them feedback, all those things. And yet managers are busy. Sometimes they're not trained well. Sometimes they have other things that are just distracting them. And when that sort of stuff starts to happen, whether we like it or not, the reality is turnover happens, disengagement happens, people start to lose interest in their work. And so when you're giving them a chance to like plug into those things, see that sort of thing, and then elevate those stories, that's the best thing we can do. I feel like is really elevating. This is what great looks like. Go try to be a manager like Charlie over there. She's amazing. She knows how to take care of her people. Here's the 3 things she's doing. You go do those things because it's working out really well for her, and help the other leaders see those things versus you should go be a better manager.
Right.
And that's not actionable. No one knows what to do about that. How do we actually take action and make that happen? Tiffany, I want to come back to something you said earlier. I think I heard you say comp at some point in your intro piece right there. So like that made my heart flutter a little bit because I'm a comp nerd a little bit. So talk about this, because there's a book I read many years ago that's talked about the reasons people leave their job. And I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, hey, managers think that 70% of it's because someone's leaving because of the money. 7% of it's reasons that are outside of the scope of money. It's not just compensation, but it does play a factor in this bigger satisfaction at work and everything else. Talk about comp as a piece of this employee experience puzzle, if you don't mind, and some of the things that maybe the audience could think about if they haven't already, some ways to think about how to use that strategically.
So, like you mentioned, everybody always thinks that compensation is the reason that someone's leaving. We're like, oh, we're not paying enough. So generally those conversations start with, can you do a market analysis with us? And that's something that Insperity offers. We do market analysis, we do salary surveys, we can do some benchmarking for you. So when we start having those type of conversations with clients, we say, okay, really, what are you trying to get to? If we come through all of this, and you are underpaying, are you going to take action on it, right? Like, are you just wanting to get the data, be like, okay, yeah, we're under market and we can't match that. I'm always trying to ensure that our clients are, once we get the data, let's do some action toward this. Maybe not today, you're going to increase everybody 25%, but let's look at where it makes sense in your organization to get the compensation up to in line with the market, to where it aligns, where your employees will see and appreciate the fact that you've done this market analysis, and also, again, increase employee engagement because they recognize that cost of living is higher, things are changing, and we want to make sure as a company that you're doing the right thing for your employees. So I recommend, I always throw out there, let's do some market analysis and benchmarking to truly see where you are. But I also recommend that you take action. And if you're in line, great. If you're not, let's put a plan in place to get you closer to where you want to be or within range.
So Tiffany, I don't know if you saw it or for the audience is watching closely, but when you said take action, Drew's over there like, yes. Like I can see him like coming to life. I think you're speaking his love language over there saying.
Right. He does that. We talk about like, hey, let's look at the compensation line, but we want to make sure it really goes back to me for the feedback. Like, right, you do the surveys, you get all the feedback. Are you sharing that back out with your employees? People want to be just seen and heard, right? So if I gave you the feedback, tell me you saw it. Tell me you're going to do something about it or you're not. Tell me you have done something about it or you plan to do something about it. It's the same thing with compensation. If we do the survey, let's talk about where we are and what we want to get to be.
Yeah, that's such a big opportunity. So I'll tell a really quick story that touches on some of the things similar to what y'all shared a minute ago, actually, Drew, on some of the interview piece. I had a chance when I was working for an organization as the HR leader. We had just acquired a new group of employees from another contract, and those employees have been pretty horribly mistreated by their previous company. Pay was a mess, like benefits were all screwed up, just all the things that could go wrong had gone wrong. And so I come in there and they've got their guards up. They're waiting for me to like, oh, by the way, we're cutting your pay or something else. They're just waiting for the negative. Right. And so I'm sitting down doing these conversations with them saying, hey, we want to make things right. We want to do right by you. We're here to respect you, take care of you. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like sitting there with their arms crossed in every meeting, just waiting for that. And so I take all those notes, just like your interviews, go back and say, okay, there's like 4 big buckets these fall into. When I come back, I'll share with you some updates on that. So when I circle back around to them, come back a few months later, I start sharing, hey, listen, that number 1 thing, we've actually got that taken care of already. Number 2 is in progress. Number 3, we're going to wait till next year because that one's going to be a bigger change. We're going to work on that. And their eyes like pop out of their heads and their mouths fall like, oh my gosh, seriously, someone's actually doing what we've asked them to do. So Drew, you were the first person to say a minute ago when you said it's not just enough to listen, but we got to start taking that action, start moving that direction. Any advice for the audience listening out there right now saying, yeah, Drew, but sometimes they ask for something we can't do, or sometimes they ask for so much, or we're not sure how to acknowledge that. And so they end up sitting on it, which I would argue is even worse than not acknowledging it at all.
100%. Tiffany said it just a minute ago. It's say that you can't do that right now, right? Just be honest, right? Your employees, for the most part, are going to be adults and they understand the reality of a situation if you explain it to them, right? It's challenging when the feedback you're getting and the response doesn't seem to jive with the reality of the situation as it's presented. So it starts to be that employees are feeling like they're either being lied to or something shady is going on, right? It's just things aren't lining up. So I've got a similar story with a buddy, actually. My best friend was working as a nurse case manager for a large, very successful organization. And this actually ties back to the comp thing. He felt over time like he was being somewhat disrespected. He was the top performer on his team, averaging 4 to 6 times the top tier goal monthly. So he's 4 to 6 times better than the top tier goal monthly. Some months 8 to times better. But then he starts getting nitpicked on things that don't really have anything to do with that actual goal. It's when he's making phone calls or how long his phone calls are, things that don't really tie back to that core metric of dollars generated. And then it comes time for raises that year. And this is a company that shortly before announcing raises had announced record profits. And so all the employees are thinking, man, this is going to be good, right? It's raise time. This will be great. 1.5% was the raise he was offered. And so it wasn't really the compensation that was the end all be all here, but to him, it was this compounded level of disrespect over time. And that compensation just happened to be that last point of disrespect. So he went back and said, hey guys, why is this just 1.5% when we're making more money than the company's ever made in the history of ever? Like, what's happening here? And their response was basically like, oh, we're looking into some things. They just didn't really give an answer. And so that ties right back. It's the employees can see reality. They know what's happening, right? You hire these people because they're intelligent and capable. So have intelligent and capable conversations with them. Be open. Just share with them what's working and what's not, what you can do and what you can't do. And at the end of the day, put some trust in people to do the right thing with that information.
I wrote down intelligent and capable in my notes. I love the way you put that. I always say we hire great people. Let's let them be great. But I like that they're intelligent, they're capable. We pick them for that reason.
Right.
Let's actually treat them like that day to day. Tiffany, you mentioned work-life balance a couple of times now. What do you think the audience here listening in needs to know about work-life balance as an element of the bigger employee experience? What's something they should be thinking about, or maybe some questions they should be asking themselves if they want to know if they're doing it right?
As a manager of people, I'm always very conscious of, like, are you able to do the things? You have a life outside of work. I always tell my team, like, Insperity is great. We have incredible clients, like, but I want you to be able to have a life outside of work. The expectation is not for you to be sitting in front of your computer at 10 p.m. That's not the expectation. You should be able to go to your son or daughter's softball or baseball game. You should be able to do those activities outside of work and be comfortable with logging off at 6, and it's okay in the areas that's possible for employees to do. I think it's all about also, again, making sure that you understand that when you're working, when you're off, you're off. I'm a big boss of, if you're on PTO, I don't want to see you emailing people. I don't want to see you responding to texts. I don't want to see that. So if you have those employees where you're that manager that's texting them and they're on PTO, think about, do you want someone to do that to you? How does that make you feel? Respect another person's time. I think it's really important to put yourself in your employee's place at times in situations like that, a work-life balance. What you want someone to do what maybe you're doing to your employee. Again, in all situations is not right.
I'm thinking about, I completely agree. Like, if you respond, you better be sending me a picture of your toes in the sand. Like, that's all I want to see. I don't want an answer to the
A
question on what's happening
margarita
with the Johnson
glass or
file.
something, the water, sun
This better be
rising.
something fun.
It better
and
be
just
something good.
completely unrelated to work. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about, Drew. So we've talked about manager development and sort of how we support our leaders and how we grow them has been part of this woven through the entire conversation today. They're a big part of the experience an employee has at work and responsible for most of their satisfaction or dissatisfaction on the job. Honestly, HR can do everything perfectly, and still, if that manager's not great, the person still could leave because we can't control that piece of it. Talk about, if you don't mind, what we can do to do a better job of picking and developing the managers that we have to make sure that they're creating a good experience for their people?
Absolutely. We've got a client that when I first got involved with them 2 years ago, their turnover was about 370% annually, which, yeah, pretty serious. Their workforce generally tends to be 25 years old or younger. So a lot of these are kids going back to school, they're working summer break, things like that. So some of that's natural. But we were certain that we could get that number down. And so one of the number one things we focused on was manager development. And this was just a very basic approach of every other month bringing all of their managers together to one place to share some war stories. What's working, what's not. Now we're talking 60 people here. So this is a pretty big group. During that time, we would listen and say, okay, what are we hearing the most that they're having challenges with? What are the recommendations that some of these managers are sharing with each other? And then we started to implement a training program and say, okay, we know that communication, coaching, having difficult conversations, these are the things that you guys are struggling with. We put together some training programs for that and started to deliver those on a regular basis, both live in person and virtually. So they had access to them at different times. We also worked really intentionally on a pipeline program. So looking at some succession planning, saying, okay, how do we identify those people before they're needed in that management role so we can start developing them early and really get them skilled up, give them opportunities to flex and grow a little bit into the manager that we need, rather than having to throw them into that job and force them to learn while doing. Because that can be really challenging as a manager, and it can lead to some pretty terrible situations, lawsuits, things like that. It can get pretty rough pretty quick. So in a 2-year span, we got their turnover down to 60%. So we literally cut over 300% turnover off for this client just by doing some of these basic things. It was incredible. They're excited. They're more profitable than they've ever been. And they're going to start giving out bonuses they never even thought would be possible for this type of model. So really, it's just about that intentionality of development. And I think also creating a pipeline to give you those ready to work people that aren't having to just make it up as they go and become good managers by making mistakes. They can become good managers before they're having to manage people.
As you were sharing that, I was thinking it's not even, we're used to saying sink or swim, but it's like trying to build a boat in the water while you're swimming. It's trying to be a manager, learning it while you're doing it. It's the definition of difficult or impossible almost, trying to do that right and do it well without having that background. So I'm going to give you both a hard question here to finish this up. So before I ask about how they can connect with Insperity and follow you and all that good stuff, I want to ask Tiffany, and we'll start with you. We've talked about a bunch of different things today, whole range of stuff, a little bit of everything under the sun, according to HR and our wheelhouse. What do you think someone out there listening should do to start?
I would say it's easy, but it's not so easy. The first thing, if you have not done a survey to truly get a standard of where your employees are, how they feel, what are their notions right now, do an employee engagement survey. Start there. Get the data points, get the data to see where you truly need to improve or continue as an organization.
Perfect. Do that, find out, that
Find
gives you
out the
direction,
information. Yep.
path to run
And
on.
that'll steer you where you need to go.
Okay, perfect. Well, now I'm curious what Drew's going to say, because you probably stole what he
I
wanted.
stole his answer. I stole his answer.
No, I'm the strategy guy, so I'm going to talk strategy, right? So it's all about identifying where you want to go, right? It's saying, okay, what do I want out of the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? Where's this all leading? What do I want this organization to look like? What do I want my HR department or whatever portion of the organization I'm in charge of to look like over the next couple sets of time periods, right? And then realize you can't do all of those things at once, right? You can't boil the ocean. So pick one or two and just start really improving those things. And that could be really simple. It can be onboarding or feedback or whatever it is that seems to be that thing you're most excited about or is creating the largest pain point for the organization. But really being intentional and creating that strategic plan, that roadmap to the future that you desire for your organization or department or team or whatever, and really just giving yourself the ability to say, hey, look, I've completed these two things. I'm on to this third one. There's progress being made here. Because if you try and do it all at once, then none of it really happens. And the way to make sure that occurs is metrics, right? Look at retention, look at engagement, look at productivity, see how you're impacting those things over time. And understand that all of this is a process of progress. So it's all about that longitudinal impact on the organization and what type of small changes you're making over time that add up to a big shift for the business.
By the desired future. and then start
Yeah.
taking little steps to get there, right? No big leaps are going to happen, or the big leaps start to stress people out. I love that as a capstone to this bigger conversation. I did, as you're talking, both of you, I just love seeing the smile and the joy when you're talking about how you can do this and how we can be better as HR leaders trying to take care of our people. Tiffany, I'll come back to you one more time. What is the most proud that you've been of your team as they've served a client or helped them solve a big problem?
With a lot of our clients, even though they may have larger employee counts, doesn't mean they're all buttoned up and everything is the right way and the right people in place. We've done some really good work with our recruiting services here at Insperity to place some top HR leaders in some of our clients' organizations. So being out there, networking, doing the interviews and placing some top people and being be able to do those strategic things with our clients, I would probably say is I have two clients in mind that we've done that, where we've hired that key decision maker for the client and we've been able to help their organizations grow, double in size.
That's awesome. Then you have a counterpart on the other side of the aisle that you're working in tandem with to make sure everything's taken care of. That's so cool.
Correct.
I love that.
And we built the rapport during the interview process, right? So I know their ticks, they know ours. You have that rapport, and it's been great.
They all know they know all of Tiffany's fun little quirks, and they're still willing to say yes. So it's gonna work out.
Right.
Okay, I love that. See, again, I get excited about hearing HR teams solving big problems. You're working alongside them in tandem, and sometimes even probably for the company size you're talking about, there is someone HR side, but even some of the smaller customers, there may not be an HR person. They're wearing 17 hats in addition to that.
Right.
And so coming alongside them to help them solve some of the people problems that apply to the bigger business challenges they're facing. The turnover example you gave, Drew, where, hey, listen, we reduce that turnover, that company's able to do a lot of things, not just the bonuses, but other things, because they can invest that money beyond the boundaries of that, because they actually are saving some of that. They're not just grinding through continuously hiring new people. So all kinds of good things there. I appreciate this so much. If someone wants to learn more about Insperity, the good work that you and the team are doing there, what's the best way for them to do that?
So Insperity.com is the number one place. There's a lot of stuff on there. We are pretty active on LinkedIn as well, but Insperity.com is going to be your number one place.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. And again, we appreciate the Insperity team for partnering with us on the research, all the good things we're able to share, some of the things we teased and highlighted today. I've got another portion where I'm sharing some of the research later on as part of this bigger webinar today, but really getting into the weeds of that, not researching data for its own sake, but just like you're talking about here. When you do surveys, it's not for fun. It's to find out where we can act, where we can serve. And that's the point of this bigger piece of research, is to figure out how we can take care of the people we have. How can we take care of the candidates that aren't employed here yet, but they're future employees, and all that good stuff. So thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.